Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our next instalment of Members in the Spotlight. And today I have with me a gentleman who needs no introduction, but just for those who don't know, Brian Cook, the CEO of Geelong Cats. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Ben, and hello to your members. Once again, we've been together a few times this year.
We have. It's great to hear from the Cats, and certainly nice on Mondays when you've won by 97 points, no doubt.
It doesn't happen too often, but it makes the weekends, enjoyable. There's no doubt about that. And when you've got a bit of a skip in your step when you come to work on Monday, so it's unfortunately it doesn't happen every weekend, but when it does, we've got to make the most of it.
And do you have any empathy for those poor Eagles who have to make the long trip back to Perth?
Well, I had 9 years as their CEO, so I have a little bit, but nowhere near as much as I did some years ago. But there's nothing worse than going interstate, travelling 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres, getting smashed, and then having to come back home and get into a first training session the morning you wake up after you get home. It's a really tough gig for people, particularly those interstate clubs from Perth, who do this every second week.
And it's still not a normal year for every club. Like, the Eagles are dodging restrictions over there. And how are you still impacted this year?
Yeah, impacted through several ways. In particular, the crowd capacity, Ben, which has ranged from 25% to 75%. Capacity, and mixing that in with the regulations that are required through the state health department. It's been a tough gig because by and large we resized our club last year in order for us to basically survive, if I can be honest. And it meant our revenues went down from 60 million to 40 million. Our staff, we went from 130 to 100 full time, and so on and so forth. So a lot depends on the crowds. If there was one particular KPI, for want of a better term, that we're looking at, we know that if we get around 60% capacity for the year, we should break even. But anything less than that or anything more than that, well, it changes accordingly. And so our financial currency, our financial position is pretty much based on, to a large degree, the department guidelines around capacity. And, that could determine not only, our finances, but also the future of some of our staff, their salaries moving forward, the ability of our partners to stay with us, for instance. So all of those things are quite dependent on crowd capacities.
Yep. And you mentioned, over 100 staff. How are staff settling back in culturally, and are they back in the office as well?
Yeah, good question. We're in a stage now where the staff are back in, and we're offering and suggesting that they do a minimum of 3 days in the office. That means 2 at home. Yep. Some staff are preferring to come in 4 or 5 days.
Yep.
That 3-2 ratio doesn't apply to our football department, who train every day apart from 1 day, of course. So there's some manoeuvring there. And what we're finding is that whilst we have an overall club policy or guideline, it is a guideline. And our managers in each department, and we have 6 departments, they have the ability to be flexible around that 3-2. So that's it. So from a ratio point of view and a return to work, that's what's happening. We're finding the nature of work has changed. I think we are more accepting now of flexible work hours, of working from home, of having Zoom meetings when required. So I think there's a greater acceptance of that. And I actually think there's been a positive move towards understanding equality a bit more, understanding that we can combine family and work a little bit more. So I'm probably not saying anything new to you, but these are the changes that we've noticed.
Yeah. And so many sponsors who are a big part of the Cats' journey. I know they all stuck with you last year, and no doubt in return you're looking to deliver even more value for them, even in sort of difficult times this year.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that there's a willingness on behalf of all of our partners to stay with us if they are capable of doing that. But there's also, I think, an expectation of something different or something more.
Yep.
And by that I mean, a greater connection, and even more focused return on investment type of arrangements. So we're finding that there are some sponsors who want, more sponsors who want a direct result for their business, and it might be sales or it might be something else. We're finding that. Or if there is a sponsor who's more into branding, which I would say Simmons would be, for instance,
yep,
there's greater evaluation and measurement now around that than what there has been. So I think it's focused people's attention on how they're spending their money, because money's becoming a bit of a scarce resource for some people. So I think they're the moves for us. And the other biggest move, of course, is our ability to service our sponsors more through digital means,
yep,
as distinct from other means, and that's been a big increase in that area. And we've found, for instance, that our digital team now has increased in size compared to many other areas which have decreased.
Yep. And continued redevelopment of Cardinia Park. Do you have much of an idea of the timelines for the next stage?
Yes, I do. We're planning for the construction to begin in October, and we won't know exactly how long the construction period will be because of the we're waiting on tenders to come back. Okay, so
yep,
basically then we'll have a better idea, but we think it's 17 or 18 months.
Yep.
If it's 17 months, it means that we will be effective for one season.
Yep.
And if it's 18 months, it becomes a little bit more riskier in terms of how many games you get into that second season, being 2023. Okay, but no, we'll start in October this year.
Now, Brian, it's in the news. It's public knowledge that you're finishing up at the end of this year, and I think everyone's sad to see you go, and I think people are hoping you stay on in some capacity. How's that transition looking to occur towards the end of the year?
Yeah, no, the time frame is the end of the year. That's my understanding. The board are managing this through the current chair, the new chair, President Craig Drummond, and I'm assuming, and I'm not directly involved in this, Ben, so I'm assuming that the process will begin mid-year and be completed by the end of the year, and it will be managed by a particular search company as well as internally our HR manager, Tracy Gilligan, as well as the board. So the time frame is June, it will start, and I think it will be completed by around about October.
Yep. And always a difficult question, but no doubt you've been asked. What kind of legacy would you like to leave and be remembered for at the Cats?
Oh, look, there's probably several things, but I think the one thing that stands out for me is probably a shift in the DNA of the culture of the Geelong Footy Club. I think once upon a time, it really worshipped the hero worshipped talent as distinct from possibly effort, and I think that swung around now. We have people who've been captain of our club like Tom Harley and Joel Selwood, who aren't always the best players in the team, but they certainly are the best leaders and the best captains. And I think a combination of both talent now and an output and effort, probably as recognised as maybe once talent was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I think that's the major thing around team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure our members are particularly interested in how the Cats are going, and no doubt most of them are supporters of the Cats. And I wish you very much the best of luck for the rest of the year, and certainly well done on your career at the Cats and for your contribution.
Thanks very much, Ben, and thank you to all of your members. Cheers.